Sorry, guys, I didn't know I was live already, but welcome to this live session of today. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending upon where you are joining us from. Today, we are going to be talking about working in a startup versus working in a corporate environment. Somebody told me once that you should never talk about religion. Why? Because people have already decided the religion they are going to follow. So they're not going to listen to you. Well, possible, it's true. Same thing they say, that same way, don't never talk about startup versus corporate because people have already decided. There are certain kind of people who love to work in a large corporate environment, and then there are certain people who love startups, people like me. I mean, even in a large corporate environment, I like to create my own startups, I mean, in a way. But anyway, I think I when I went to YouTube and I saw there are so many videos on this topic. I mean, it seems like a lot of gyanis, a lot of knowledgeable people are trying to give you knowledge from their experience, share this wisdom from their experience on which one is better. Of course, there also I see clear bias. I mean, there are certain kind of people who love corporates. They say, oh, you want stability, you want security, you want growth, go to corporate. Startup only if you just don't get any other job and all that. Some people who come from startup, they tell you that, oh, startups are the way to go and all that. So I thought, let me give you a better knowledge of these two environments, then you can decide yourself, or better, create your own environment. Many of you know that I have been an entrepreneur all my life, an entrepreneur at heart. So I like that better. What about creating a startup environment in a large corporate? Because to me, all these are mindsets. But let's get back to the topic that we have at hand. So first of all, I like to hear from you today, and we have set up a survey on a Menti. In case some of you may know already, there is a software called Menti.com. Just go to a browser, open a browser, log into www.menti.com, and enter the code 67595783. Again, the code is 67595783, and you will be walked through some questions, and then if you can answer, I'll get the answers here and I'm going to just display them here. The first question is, do you think it was excessive workload that affected India's performance in T20? I mean, I thought let me start with this question. I really like this question. Again, menti.com, code is 67595783. This is the only time we're going to talk about cricket, I tell you. And I think some people are saying yes, some people are saying no. Right now, we are kind of pretty even. Yes or no? Excessive workload that affected Team India's performance. I'm not going to give my opinion. I just want to hear from you here. Anybody else? I think we are still, very even here. Okay. Sorry. Next question is the workload distribution. I am assuming many of you have experience in working in corporate or startup. So I want to hear from you whether workload distribution in corporate is better than startup. Do you agree? Strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree. Strongly agree, disagree, agree. I think there's, again, we are seeing some even stuff here. The workload distribution in corporate is better than startups. Well, that's great. I think we are getting warmed up. Better responses or more responses to this question than the previous one. So let's go to the next. Sorry, I think What is more important for you? Let's look at this. And of course, when I say what is more important for you, that is meant, I meant by the job, in a job, stability, security, scope to learn new things. Okay, let's see. All right. So some people like stability, some people like security, some do like ability to learn new things. Wonderful. So we are getting okay. Which of these sectors offer better prospects of learning and growth? Your understanding of this, startups or corporate? Yes. Okay. Well, seems like most of the people are okay. Given an option, which one would you prefer? And I must tell you, these days, I'm sure many of you have heard of this term, great resignation. The job market is really, really hot, and there are many jobs available, both in corporates and in startups, and very few resources. So I think, even though we said here, given an option, which one would you prefer? These days, most of you can have your pick. It's a perfect time to actually be talking about this because it, perhaps in the longest time we are in a situation where you can you know you can choose where you want to work, startup or this. Now, talking about my life, I think many of you who have perhaps listened to other podcasts or other talks that I have given, that I started my career with with a large company in India, DCM Data Products, that was in New Delhi, and then I moved to US. And in US, I worked for, I would say, it was a large company, about 40-50 million dollar revenue company, American Megatrends. But the department I was working in, it was very small. So I always, felt it was like a startup within a large corporation. And of course, we grew that to be almost 10 times larger than the rest of the company. So of course, it became a large company. So I was part of the journey myself. So I have seen how a startup transitions itself to a larger environment, and then what are the pros and cons of larger environments versus a smaller environment. Of course, both of them have their positives. Now let's talk about startups. About startups, something a friend of mine once told me, I had written it down, so I'll just read it to you. He said that it is, you will get access to a job that you're really not qualified for. I mean, in a startup, you get access to a job you're not really qualified for. It is really true. When I first became CEO, I didn't know anything about becoming a CEO. But a startup, it was my second or next company in US, that was iVivity, where I was given the opportunity to be CEO. And of course, I didn't think I was qualified for that, but I think I got I grew into the job. Same way, the next company and the company after that, and all these things. So in a startup, I think if you're really looking for ways to learn new things, if you're really looking for getting experience in things you may not necessarily be qualified for, startup is the way to go. But if you're looking for stability, if you're looking for secure job security, if you are looking for, maybe in some cases people may say, better money, though I may disagree. These days there are startups all over the world which are paying a lot more, both in terms of cash as well as in terms of stock options, than large corporations. But I mean, some people say that corporates now, offer better salary than startups, but I think give or take some. But I think I would not go too much about that. But I think stability, security, yes. Corporate, a larger company which is not dependent on their board meetings or their board to release more funds to them, or investors to give them more money, looking for next round and all that. I think corporates offer better security, but startups can offer you anytime better abilities to learn things or better opportunities to learn newer things. Now, I think let's talk about the next question that we have. We have some questions that people have sent us. Between corporate or a startup, which one should I choose as a fresher? Well, startup, corporate, startup, corporate. Well, I'll go with startup. you know, that is the time. In fact, somebody had once mentioned or recently mentioned to me yesterday that millennials, of course, most of the freshers that you are born between, I would say, they say before 1996, in 81 to 96, those are called millennials. They are choosing to work in startups. And the reason is because they all, being fresh out of college, most of them are, they really want to learn newer things. They want to learn things that they may not necessarily be qualified for because college may not have taught you all those things. And also, you want to do more than what you think you are capable of. Startup is the best environment for you. And you also don't, suppose in the worst case, startup goes bust, goes under in few months, few years, you still have the whole life in front of you to build your career. So if you ask me, if you are a fresher, if you are, go for a startup. And these days, I will tell you, I think one of the biggest benefit of startups I find, especially in today's environment, is that it provides you a gateway to building your own startup. You work in a startup, learn the tricks of the trade, come up with the next big problem to be solved, leave that company, do your own startup, and then one of the major benefits of working for a startup is that a corporate job can never give you what we refer to as a pot of gold at the end of the tunnel, meaning you work for 20, 30, 40 years, you have fixed salary, and it, of course, you have regular increments, and that's it. But if you work for a startup, that is a possibility you may get a pot of gold at the end of this, meaning when the company exits. You all know not only the founders, but many employees of Fresh Desk became millionaires. Many employees of Fresh Works or Fresh Desk, I think, I forgot, Fresh Works, I think that's the name of the company now. Flipkart, you name it. There's so many companies, Oyo, Swiggy, and even yesterday's news of, I think that company Nika, I guess Nika. I think not only the founder, but many employees became millionaires overnight. So startups offer you this opportunity, and such a thing you can never get in a corporate environment. So as a fresher, be bindas, be bold, man. Join a startup. Let's go to the next question. Can we go to the next question? What is the work culture like at a startup versus a corporate? Corporates always have a structure environment, and that is the beauty of it. Many people who love structured environment, they prefer corporate, and corporate is the right place for them. Starting from, I would say, the hiring process, you will find a recruiter scheduling a series of interviews for you with various management team members or various engineers or various people who are hiring managers who would be talking to you, and after that an HR manager will talk to you, and then even when you show up, of course, in COVID environment, a lot of these things are being done remotely. Even when you are being onboarded, you have a very structured process for onboarding. Perfect thing for those who love structure. In fact, I must share with you my own son. He's a very structured guy. The first company right after graduating from Georgia Tech he went with was Deloitte. And I knew, I didn't try to persuade him otherwise, because I know he's a very structured person and he will love structure and he will learn more out of this structure. Whereas in startup, you may find lack of the structure, right? Though there may be a management team already in place, but in some cases, maybe you are the management team, and then you just have another founder or few founders who are trying to convince you to join them. Blue pill and red pill, like in Matrix. You take this or versus that. They may try to give you all the stories like that to convince you to join them. so that you can become rich like all the other founders of or other management team members of previous startups. But in a startup, generally there is a lack of structure, and good and bad. People who thrive in structure, not a good environment for them. People who love learning new things, doing new things, trying out new things, perfect environment for them. I remember when I was in a corporate environment, first time, my first job out of college in Delhi, corporate environment. If I ever wanted to do something new, I was never allowed to. And I think when I came to US, I found same Sanjay was doing 3 or 4 times as much work as I was doing back in India in that corporate environment. Even though this was, as I said, this was a large company, 30, $40 million company, but the group I was in was a smaller group. And we were given freedom to do things as we liked, freedom to come and go when we wanted, freedom to pick up new softwares, that new packages to try out and things like that. So within reason, of course. So that, I think, hopefully that gives you an idea of the work culture: structured, unstructured, corporate structured, startup unstructured, but ability to learn new things, more freedom. Less freedom, more freedom. Hope it answers your question. Let's go to the next one. Is it beneficial to leave a corporate and join a startup? Yes, I think some people have done that successfully, I would say. That, I think, of course, this goes against the answer to the first question I gave, where I suggested to freshers to join startup first. I still stand by that, because you that experience itself will qualify you to get a much better role in a corporate if you ever have to go back to a corporate later on, right? So if you are already in a corporate, if this person who's asking this question, better to leave a corporate, join startup, I think it depends on you. I think it depends on you, the situation of your life, and most importantly, what kind of person are you? Situation in your life. If you already have, already married, have children, and all that, then of course you have to see whether the startup environment would be able to offer you the stability and security and a regular, guarantee. Here, security I meant by security of a paycheck every month, right? If startup may or may not be able to offer you, they may ask you to take less cash and more stock options and things like that. So I think look at your situation and then look at yourself as a person. At the end of the day, I like my, the person I have quoted many times, Simon Sinek. He said, people don't work for companies, people work for people. It also depends on the person you are going to be working for. Do you really enjoy working in a current corporate environment, the current supervisor or current set of people that you're working with? If you do, don't need to leave it, because you may not find the same thing in a new environment and you may regret leaving this. I must tell you that in MSIS we have several different groups. We work for many large corporates in a way, and we are like offshore development centers for many corporates in US and in Europe and other parts of the world. Now we have seen that some places the attrition rate is very, very low. Nobody leaves. People work hard. Even at 2 a.m., if you may find some people working, in 2 a.m. because they're trying to match their time with US. We don't require them to do so, but they like to do it on their own. And that reason I investigated was because they liked working in their environment, they liked working in their group, they liked working for their supervisor in India, they liked working for their supervisor in America. So people work for people, not necessarily for companies. So to answer your question, leaving corporate and joining startup depends on you, depends on your situation. If you're already set, if you're already stable, like the people you work with, no need to leave. But if you are really, itching to learn newer things, itching to try to find, change the world, conquer the world, trying to find that pot of gold at the end of the tunnel, startups are for you. Hopefully, I've answered your question. Let's go to the next. What are the pros and cons of working at a startup versus working at an established company? I think I have been, talking about that through all these questions. I think, as I've said, that a corporate offers you structure, it offers you security, it offers you stability, and a startup offers you an ability to learn new things, freshness of approach, and being able to go for a job that you may not necessarily be qualified for. And I think, of course, last but not the least, is that it can also provide you a gateway to building your own startups later on. you know so I think some of these reasons hopefully can give you a better perspective. Then why do people work in big corporate players always advise to join a startup even though they didn't quit their corporate job and join a startup? Yes, grass on the other side is always greener, my friends. you know People who work in startup always feel, corporate jobs are so cushy, they don't have to work that hard. And people who work in corporate things, startups are so nice, these guys become rich and drive Mercedes and BMWs and all that stuff. you know I would say there is no substitute for hard work regardless of the environment you are in, and that I'm saying from my own experience. And I have seen that, if there is a saying, if you can remember, keep that in your head: the cream always rises to the top. You understand? Cream always rises to the top. A talented, hardworking person would always be seen, will always become visible, whether in a corporate or in a startup. You can't hide yourself because you're so good. And if you want to know talent and hard work, I am proponent of both. I mean, talent needs hard work to shine. Talent by itself is not good, so you do need to hard work. So combination of these two, if you have, I think whether you are in a corporate or in a startup environment, you will thrive. But people who work in corporate, they think, yeah, startups are very good because they are tired. It's a monotonous. The cons of corporates are they are monotonous. You have the same job that you keep doing for a number of years. I mean, in corporate these days, with so many job opportunities being available, people are going from one corporate to another corporate because they get monotonous job here and they feel they may get a better opportunity or a better way to learn things in a new environment. Well, that's another way to look at it, right? But I think that's kind of what happens. Hope I have answered your question. Don't go by what others tell you. Look at your situation, look at yourself as a person. Like I said in the previous answer, your present situation, and you as a person. If you're suitable for startups, go for it. Is it a good idea to join a startup with 9+ years of experience? Yes, why not? Again, look at your situation. Because startups may not necessarily be able to offer you the stability you may be needing with so much experience, but you also are perfect candidate to join a startup at a much higher role than you are currently in. We ourselves at MSIS have hired people who were, let's say, manager, or sorry, in a large company, managers. We have hired them at a higher role, right? And I think that kind of happens because we, in a way, even though we are a large company or a mid-sized company, but we try to set up or try to consider ourselves as a startup, very entrepreneurial. So we give a bump up in the roles. So if you want that kind of opportunity, startups is a good way for you. Then, of course, your career may take another path. You may learn newer things, and then you may show up at another corporate at a much higher role if you so wish. But I hope I've answered your question there. Certain startups, next question is, pay better than corporate. Why? Because they have raised a lot of money and they are really looking for good talent which matches the requirements they have. See, startup, the idea, look at a startup as a compressed corporate. What a, I mean, in any economy, startups are very, very important part of the growth of the economy. Why US is world's largest economy? Because they encourage startups, and they let startups thrive. I mean, their entire setup ecosystem is built for startups to thrive. And what does it give the economy? What does it give the country? It gives the country a way to do more things, be at the forefront of newer technologies. In US, startups create the most jobs. I mean, can you believe that? I mean, startups create more jobs than large corporates. I mean, all put together. And even during COVID-19, US had more startups than any other years in the history. I mean, I think that's, I mean, these data that you can look at. Now, in a startup, you have, let's say, 1 year to do a project that in a large corporation you may take 3 4 5 years. So to do the project in 1 year, you may need people who have the right skill set, right talent, and ability to work hard at the right time in that 1 year time period. So you should be willing to pay anything that you can possibly can to hire the right person. So sometimes, I mean, when I worked in startups myself, I did my startups, we always were very picky. I mean, even though I talked about having lack of structure in the interview process, but the resume sifting process, review process was very, very stringent. We always looked for a person who can get the job, who can get the ball rolling from day one, who didn't need any training, who can get things done in a shorter period of time, and he is really motivated to do that. And we created a lot of incentives too, for them. But I think that's why startups pay better in majority of the cases these days, because they're also able to raise large amounts of money. So they want the right talent at the right price, or the higher price than the corporates are giving. Hope I have answered your question. Let's go to the next one. Does working for a startup look good in your resume? I think it depends on who's looking at your resume. If someone like me, I would really love that experience. If you have, it means you have been beaten, you have worked hard, and you have taken risks, and you're a person who wants to learn new things. These are all the things, qualities in a startup, right? And I think I'd love to see people coming from startup applying to jobs at MSIS and at any other place that you like to. And this is a perfect time. I mean, I think this is a time for you to land your dream job wherever you like, right? Okay, let's go to the next. How much role should age play while deciding between joining a startup, or between a corporate and a startup? Very good question, Anand. I think age, from your perspective, should not play a role. What should play a role is your situation, right? And why I say that is because there may come an age in your life where, let's say, you don't have many responsibilities, and you may still, you may want to go back to startups. Some people say, oh yeah, freshers, good, freshers join startups and later on join corporate. No, it depends on your situation. Let's say both you and your spouse are working, right? And you really are a guy. So situation and what kind of person you are. And you really are kind of a guy who like to go and thrive in unstructured environment where you can learn newer things. You are perfect. At any age you can go to startup. Your spouse is working, you have that anchor, you know, if I may say, income that is coming in, so you can take risk. There is certain element of risk. I've had many friends who did that, and who, I mean, who thrived in startups because they had an anchor income, right? Coming from, with their spouse was a doctor or other professional. So perfect time, perfect. So anytime you can do a startup. Otherwise, depends on your situation. In my own life, I can tell you that I worked for a large company, then startup environment in a large company, grew that to very large size, and we sold that. And at that peak of that time, when I was VP of sales and marketing for a fairly large environment, actually, I left and started my own company. And that was Really, I was perhaps, I would say maybe 34 years old. So age, I mean, I think I started my own company. So I left the previous company, which was giving me a large amount of money every month. And from next day onwards, and after I quit, no money. So we had to raise money, and then we had to, but I think I kind of, and I didn't even have that anchor income I talked about of my spouse. But I had savings, so I think I felt I could survive, and I really wanted to do something on my own. So I think that was, I wish I'd done it sooner. Now, if I only thing I sometimes think about, what if I had done it 10 years earlier than that? But it's okay. Whenever you do it, that is the right time. So there is no age, situation, and the kind of person you are. And hopefully that answers your question. If there are other questions, can we go to the next? What is the most crucial aspect of people management? Varun, that's a very good question. I'm thinking here. I think I have answered this question in some of my previous sessions, where I'm very fond of heart to heart connection with the people from heart to heart, but more from the, I would say, corporate perspective, empowering them to do things, empowering them to learn things, and then you standing by watching that. That to me is a perfect way to manage anybody, whether it be in your family, in your society, or in your work. I know it's more of a philosophical answer, but that's the best I could give you this morning. Things that corporates should adopt from startups. Very good question, Ashish. And I think at MSIS, we have tried hard to do this, I would say. Create that entrepreneurial environment where people are empowered to learn things, empowered to do things as they wish. Within reason, of course. You can't just give a magic wand to everybody, credit card, go and spend and buy anything you want. But within reason, we have tried to create that environment. And that's, I think, you know many of you, if you have heard about the environments, companies like Google, Facebook, or these days even Microsoft are trying to develop, is that, few years ago I went to Google campus. It looked no different from a set of incubators. I mean, startups as part of an incubator. Set of startups as part of an incubator, where every building was kind of had its own flexible work culture, its own color scheme, its own set of restaurants, cuisines, work environments. People could work anywhere. That you don't have to dress up in a certain way. I think I know the dress up. Something that I thought about was that, to me, corporate reminds you of suit and tie, and a startup reminds you of a jeans and t-shirt. So I think corporate can adopt that dress culture from startups. Though I'm wearing today's suit, but I consider myself a startup guy. Startup can, adopt that from a corporate environment, right? Once in a while, why not? So I think there are no questions. I hope you all have enjoyed this session. Uh, Looking forward to talking more to you next Thursday, same time. Good luck and good night and good rest of the day based on where you are. Thank you.